All right, welcome to this presentation on inspection points and additions we've made to checklists. We've made quite a few. This is scheduled for an hour, though I can't imagine it running that long. This recording will be made available after everything's finished up. If you have any questions during the session, please put it into the chat of the Zoom meeting. I just put a question in there, which should have lit up the chat button on your Zoom meetings. So you can put any questions there. I'll do what I can to answer them. All right. So inspection points. This was a part of our legacy software that just got added into global. In short, an inspection point is something you want to check on an asset to see if it meets certain standards or doesn't. And you can use that to mark something as passed or failed, that inspection point on a work order. So this is a work order I have. It's a task I made for an electrical issue on a 3D printer. And it's got two inspection points on it, one for the amount of filament left in the printer and one for the quality of the print coming off of the printer. With these on here, I know to check both of these. The amount of filament remaining, if it doesn't have enough, I can mark it as failed. The quality of the print is fine, I can mark that as passed. So that's one of the key core functionalities of inspection points. The other big one that we're going to be building up to is this work order assign. If I click that button, it means I can then create a follow-up work order to this inspection point so that a technician will just have a work order ready to go and it's already in the system that someone needs to come and take a look at this. To actually make that work order, I'm just going to click on this button over here, click assign work order. I have to click create work order one more time. And there we go, there's a new work order inside the system. Now, I went over that rather quickly. That's because I just wanted to demonstrate the core functionality all of this kind of builds up to. Next up, we're going to be going over just how to get these onto a work order, the mechanics behind them, how to manage the libraries of inspection points and checklists that we've added in. And I'm also going to cover how all of this ties into the MicroMain mobile technician app. So over here, I have a work order that's already in progress. It's for the same 3D printer. It's kind of a way of getting to the point where that task was at. I've already got it into the planning phase. I've already got labor assigned to it. I'm going to go through and on the checklist tab, I'm going to add in my inspection points. Inspection points live in the checklist tab. It didn't go anywhere and neither did checklist items. You can still add in checklist items from here, but I want to focus in on adding inspection points. To add inspection points, you just need to make sure that this button is clicked to inspection points, that it's highlighted in bright orange. And from there, add an item you want to check. So that's a good standard cleanliness of the work area. Just inspect that while you're there, make sure the work area is clean. The plus button that's in here disappears when you start typing, but it's still there. Just make sure the task is the correct task you're going to add it to. Click this, and now I've got an inspection point in the system. You can visually tell the difference between an inspection point and a checklist item, because a checklist item will actually have the checkbox in it. You can see that the inspection point will also have values for min, max, value, the status, and the work order assigned. The checklist just has this box, and then that's it. So that's the ways you can add inspection points and checklists from scratch. And I say from scratch because if you click on this add from over here, you can see we have places where you can pull in inspection points and checklist items that you set up ahead of time. The easiest ones are the specifications and conditions. Those of you familiar with managing assets in MicroMain Global will recognize these as things you can assign to assets. If you do have a condition or specification assigned to this, you can just click it. It will bring up all the conditions assigned to this asset. And then I say, okay, I've got two conditions on here. I'll just check that button off right there, or maybe I only want one of them. this case, I'll go ahead and throw both on there. Make sure you have the correct task on here and then click Add to Task. And so now my conditions have been put onto this task as inspection points for the technician to follow up on. You can see that because of the condition I added here, amount of filament remaining, it is actually expecting a value to be passed through. You can tell because I have my min-max assigned here. So conditions and specifications can both be marked so that they expect a value to be passed through and have a low and high range. They have an ideal range that they're expecting to see a value pass through, and that can automatically be used to mark it as passed or failed. More on that when we get into finishing out the actual task. As you can see, I don't only have to do this with conditions. I can do this with specifications as well. They both have pretty much the exact same features. The other option you have in here to add inspection points and checklist items is the template. So template, it doesn't mean you're pulling in a template necessarily. The template means you're pulling in from the checklist library, which I will be going over as part of this training. That's going to be in the library section over here. Like I said, we'll get to that in a bit. Inspection points and checklist items can be pre-made and given groups so that it's easy to pull these in. If I know exactly what I want from this list, I can go ahead, check it off, and click Add to Task if I know exactly which one that I want. However, if I know I want to pull from a specific group, I can search by this group. So let's say safety related. I can check off all of them at the same time and add them to the task. So I can really add quite a lot of these very quickly. That warning is telling me I can't have two with the same name, so it didn't add one of them. So like many other parts of the program, you can't have two items with the same name in a lot of places. So it's saying you can't have that same inspection point on this task twice. If I had a second task on here, I could add it to both, but not on the same one. So more on setting up that templates later. I'll also go over adding conditions and specifications. As soon as we get through sort of the mechanics of all of this. Now, after I've added these inspection points to a task, I still have more things I can do with them. So this amount of filament remaining. If I click on this, like a checklist item, it gives me this whole screen that I can interact with over here. So I'll go over each of these one by one. The sort is the order it should go in on this page. So by adjusting the sort and hitting save, I can actually move it up and down this list over here. Or what was it, sort on this checklist? Yeah, amount of filament, that was 2. So now it's, let's see, let's get this down to like 0, and that should move it. All right, there we go. So it will order these by the sort, but it stops if you have more than one item with the same sort value. But you can move them up and down work orders like that. The next is the group. The group is, if you're going to use this, assigned at another spot. It's either assigned in the library when you add it there, or if it's a condition or a specification, it's automatically assigned to the group. So this is not something you have to worry about at the work order stage. Just if you're adding from the template, you can search by group and make it easier to pull a lot of them in at the same time that way. But once it's on the task, you don't have to worry about group anymore. Required to complete. If you check this off, MicroMain Global will not allow the task to be marked as complete until something is done with it. If you have that checked off for a checklist item, it just means that needs to be checked off. It needs to be taken off the task, marked complete, that's it. If it's an inspection point, it means it needs to be marked as passed or failed. And again, that being checked off means that you can't be completed until something is done with that point. The assign work order, that wouldn't be filled out at this stage. That marks this inspection point as failed and that a follow-up work order needs to be created. You can leave that unchecked. When the technician goes in and fills this in, they'll check that off if it's appropriate. The control number is a legacy field from Classic. Currently, there's no functionality tied to this, but our development is looking at it. The corrective action. This field is very important. If you make a follow-up task or follow-up work order from this inspection point, the corrective action will be the service that's on that work order. So if I say, hey, if this fails, I want you to put in a corrective action of replace filament. And then there's the description that will go on that new work order. So I can say ahead of time, hey, if this fails, this is your corrective action. This is what goes on that work order. So that's the service for the corrective work order, and that's the description for the corrective work order. And you can apply that ahead of time or leave that blank and have the technician fill out what corrective action they're going to do when they get all of these complete and turn all of these into follow-up work orders. This is also where they'll mark it as passed or failed. You can mark it as passed or failed in this phase, but obviously you'd want to leave that for the technicians. The condition, if you do have this set up as a condition or a specification, the name and description from those will fill into here, as well as the high and low values you're expecting to see for whatever measurement you're taking. So this set value is what the technician will click later in order to put a value in for this condition. And these notes and comments, these act just like the description and comments that you see on a task. Note is where you leave a note for the technician, giving them additional insight on how to check out, inspect this inspection point. And comments is where a technician give additional feedback back to you, saying, when I went to inspect this, such and such happened. So it's, again, the same connection between description and comments on a task. Very important, once you're done doing any changes on this screen, click Save. And before I move on, there is one additional button I forgot to mention. It's this one at the top. If you click this checklist item up here, it changes it from an inspection point to a checklist item. So that's it for that. All right. So that's everything you need to go through in order to put inspection points onto a work order. Now that we've got a ton on here, we're going to issue it. We're going to complete it. And I gave you a preview of this step earlier, so we won't be on this for too long. When completing a task, they'll need to come into checklist items to see all of the checklists and inspection points. Checklist items are still very easy to go through. Just say, I did this, I did this, I did this. However, for these inspection points, if I want to do something other than just mark them as pass or failed, it can be handy to come directly into the inspection point by clicking on the line. So in here, this one was marked as required to complete. So I have to put something in here, and I can mark it as passed or failed. However, this one was unique in that it has a high and a low range. If I set the value as being out of that range, then when I click Save, it will automatically mark it as failed. So that meets the qualification. Yeah, you can see the alert here. It fell out of the range, so it automatically marked it as failed. I do still afterwards have to check off this work order assigned to mark it as something that I need a follow-up work order for. But it will mark it as failed automatically for me. This is also the step where if the corrective action had not been filled in ahead of time, your technician could fill in the corrective action and mark in a description here. This corrective action pulls in from your entire list of services. So there's a lot to select from, but once there, that can be pretty handy in making your follow-up work order. So let's say I go through and pass the rest of these. If I mark something as passed, it will automatically get rid of the check mark and work order assign. All right. Could mark that one as failed just for fun. All right. Now, before this is marked as completed, before we complete this task, which you can still do this after this task is completed, you just have to know how to get back to this screen. But before I mark this as completed and leave, I'm going to want to make follow-up work orders for these 2 failed items. To do that, it's these 3 horizontal blue bars here. If you click on that, one of the options is assign work orders. You click assign work order, it's going to bring up all of the ones that you marked off as work order assign and saying, are you wanting to create a new work order for these? So I could say, no, I've changed my mind. Don't click check air pressure. But I want to do one for both of these. So you can see doing that has created one follow-up work order for both inspection points. I'm going to open up work order 1833 in a new tab just to show you the new one that's been made. You can see it's already in the planning phase. The description is already filled out. I've got my 2 tasks here, one for each failed inspection point. If I go into task, I see my replace filament service has already been filled in with my description. However, the description has this extra little bit, failed inspection point, amount of filament remaining from work order such and such. So you can keep track of what the origin of this was. So at this point, all you would really need to do is assign labor to the tasks and then get it out to your technicians. And of course, now that we've acted on all of the inspection points that were marked as required for completion, I can mark this whole thing as complete without issue. So that is all of the functionality of inspection points that have been put onto a task, including how to actually make a follow-up work order for them. So next up, I'm going to go into the libraries for checklist items called libraries, checklists. And this is where we can add checklists and inspection points into the system ahead of time to make it so we can easily apply these to work orders, or so we can easily apply these to PMs. Something you may have noticed from the way I added all of these inspection points to tasks previously is that you do have to add these one task at a time. There's no way to add groups of inspection points or groups of checklist items to an entire work order. It's still one task at a time. But if you've got large numbers that you need to put in, getting them all in under the same group can make it go much faster. I've seen PMs where the same group of inspection points needed to be applied to 20 tasks. So putting them all in made it much faster to get them assigned to all the tasks. So on this page, adding a new inspection point or checklist item here is pretty much very similar to the way you would add it to a task. Either highlight checklist or inspection point, depending on what you're trying to add into the system. In my case, I'm going to add in an inspection point for amount of filament remaining. Click the plus button. And now I've got amount of filament remaining here. I can click into it and then adjust these in a way that makes it so these are already filled out when I put these onto a task. So I can pre-assign my corrective action as replace filament. So now when I put this onto a task, I get around that. I can go ahead and put notes in here. I can even assign a group. I'm not going to assign the group right now because I want to show you how to make a group, and then I'm going to assign it on the other page. But I can fill out a good amount of this ahead of time to make it easier to put onto a task. To add a brand new group into the system, it's actually this button up here in the upper right-hand corner where you would normally see our orange plus button. This button up here is adding a group. I'm going to click add group and say 3D printer inspection points. And so now I have a group in that I can use for all of my inspection points relating to my 3D printers. Now, to apply this group to this inspection point, I can go back in here, apply the group and hit save, or you may recognize this from the work order and task screen. I can assign this group to any one that I have checked off down here. So I'm going to check this box, go to set group, mark 3D inspection points, and then I'm going to click submit. And now it's added to the group. The same goes for checklist items. The only difference is you make sure checklist is highlighted before you add the item in here, and works exactly the same. You can say, here's one collect signature of on-site manager. You can set the notes ahead of time, the group. You can even apply sorting ahead of time. So that is managing the inspection points and checklist library. The last bit is going to, at least inside of MicroMain Global, is going to be assigning conditions and specifications. So what I've done is entered in the asset for my 3D printer. This is the same one I was putting all of those tasks against earlier. Meters and conditions, that's over here. This is a course where you can enter in a meter for an asset, but this is where I also entered in my conditions ahead of time. To add a condition, let's say I want to say condition of the printing bed, which is also something you need to check for in 3D printers. Otherwise, the quality of your prints drop. The template, if you've got a condition in your conditions library, you can select it from the template. Otherwise, you just fill it out going down the window. The item is always this asset. The name of my condition of the print bed. I would type in a description that would appear on any inspection points derived from this condition. The bed look clean. I could apply units and a high-low value range. This would allow me to take a discrete value to assign to this condition. And then the comment, not fully necessary, it's just a comment for the condition itself. Once I click save, that's added the condition. So now I've got 3 conditions on here, all of which I can turn into inspection points on any task I make against this asset. You've also noticed the last reading will automatically fill in here. And you can look up a history of readings, much in the same way you would look up a meter reading. Specifications is added down here. You can see I added in a similar one. The only difference from here is the specification needs to be in your specification library ahead of time. And these value, high and low, this is the value you're expecting, a high range and a low range. This always inspect button is here. Currently, this always inspect button has no functionality inside the program. That's put in there for future developments. But you would fill this out the same way as filling out a condition and then click save. So that's managing conditions and specifications. So that's the last part of that. I need to show you inside MicroMain Global itself. The rest is Mobile Technician. So that one I actually just have screenshots of because the phones displaying on these meetings tends to have terrible lag. So you're actually probably seeing as much motion as you would if I were displaying my actual phone. Inspection points can be worked inside of the Mobile Technician app. As you can see with this screenshot here on the left, the amount of filament and quality of print, those are the inspection points on that task I showed you earlier. If you tap on them, it will bring up a window saying, here's the name of it. Does it require completion? And it even has a place where you can input the value for that condition or specification if it's set up to take a value. And also you get a notes field. You would then hit save if you had marked it as passed or failed. and that would complete the inspection point. So not a whole lot here, except to say inspection points have their full functionality inside of the mobile technician. You can even see that button there that says assign work order, and tapping that will indeed allow you to make a brand new task right then and there. You won't be able to assign labor to that task, but you will get it in the system so that all you have to do is assign labor to it later. The one thing you can do in Global for inspection points that you cannot do in the mobile technician app is you cannot add inspection points to a task from the app. You have to add inspection points from MicroMain Global, from the full website. Otherwise, they don't show up on the task. So that is something that will be added in time. But right now, keep in mind, inspection points do need to be added from the full program. All right. So I have to say that's pretty much it. Inspection points are delightfully simple. They can really add to your workflow if you get in and get them set up and really put them into your workflow. But they're really setting them up and using them. There's not a whole lot to them. So at this point, I'll say I can open this up to any questions we might have. You can put them in the chat, or if you've got a mic set up, you can turn it on and ask them real fast. All right. I'm not getting any. So hopefully that means I've explained it all pretty well. Like I said, this will be recorded and posted on our help site. Without any further questions, I'll say that we've wrapped this up. For those of you who've been waiting for lunch for this, hopefully you're able to still go get something good in time before the lines are too long. And I'll wish everyone a lovely rest of your morning or afternoon, wherever you may be.